The text on my phone was short, but it might as well have been a bomb. Account overdrawn, $6,314.19. At first, I stared at the notification in the muted blue glow of my bedroom, trying to convince myself it was a mistake. I was meticulous with our budget. I checked our joint account every morning, paid the mortgage on time, even mapped out our groceries 3 weeks ahead. But there it was, a minus sign, a red number, and a message I couldn't ignore. I rushed from the bedroom to my home office, pulled up the banking app, and watched as page after page of withdrawals flickered across the screen: Target, Amazon, luxury boutiques I'd never heard of, cash advances, and then late fees stacking on top of each other like an avalanche. I heard my wife, Clara, down the hallway getting ready for bed, humming tunelessly, as if nothing was wrong. My hands shook. The numbers didn't make sense. My mind was already racing for explanations that might soften the panic clawing up my throat. I opened the bedroom door. Clara had just finished brushing her teeth and was toweling her face, her back to me. All I could say was, "Did you buy anything big today?" It came out too soft, too controlled for the chaos in my head. She didn't turn around. "Why?" she asked. "My name is Daniel Price. I'm 36 years old. I work as a logistics coordinator for a regional shipping company, steady, if unremarkable, work. Clara and I live in the kind of suburb that feels both safe and suffocating: green lawns, identical mailboxes, neighbors who wave but don't linger. We have 2 kids, Ben is 7, Nora is 4. I thought I had done everything right. We had a modest home, a sensible savings plan, a routine. I grew up the oldest of 3 brothers in a family that turned financial stress into an Olympic sport, so I promised myself my own children would never feel the anxiety I did. This is the story of how everything fell apart. In the years leading up to that moment, my life had been predictable. I woke up at 6:15 every morning, squeezed in a run before the kids woke. Clara and I took turns with breakfast duty. She was a stay-at-home mom by choice. She said she wanted to be there for every scraped knee and school pickup, and while it stretched our budget, I never questioned it. I actually liked the routine, the clarity of knowing what was expected of me. I'd leave for work by 7:30, return at 6 o'clock, and most evenings we ate together around the old oak table we bought secondhand the year Ben was born. We weren't rich, but I thought we were secure. That's the word that always came to mind: secure. I made lists, checked boxes. I tracked every expense, sometimes to Clara's annoyance. She said I was obsessive, and maybe I was. But I knew what it felt like to have the power company threaten to shut off the lights. My parents divorced over money. Fights that started about bills became fights about everything else. I promised myself that would never be me. The only real tension in our house came from her family. Clara's parents lived nearby, and they made it clear, sometimes in words, sometimes just in how they looked at me, that they thought their daughter had married beneath her. Her mother, Judith, seemed to keep a running tally of my failures: the time I forgot their anniversary dinner, how I dressed for holiday gatherings, the year I bought Clara a used car instead of the new one she'd hinted at. Clara never defended me, exactly, but she'd roll her eyes and promise me later that it didn't matter. I tried to believe her. On weekends, we shopped for groceries together, or sometimes took the kids to the park. Clara liked to browse stores, picking out clothes for the kids even if we didn't need them. I noticed little things piling up: new toys, shoes with price tags still attached, kitchen gadgets that ended up in the back of cupboards. I told myself it was normal. Clara grew up with more than I did, maybe this was her version of comfort. Still, I watched the bills. Every Friday, I'd check our accounts. I'd ask Clara if she needed anything extra. She'd smile, sometimes tease me for being an old man about money, but she always handed over her receipts. I thought we were honest with each other. Looking back, I see how much I wanted to believe in our little system. I thought if I just worked hard enough, planned enough, nothing bad could happen. So when the overdraft text pinged my phone that night, it wasn't just my sense of security that collapsed. It felt like a betrayal of everything I'd worked so hard to build. That night, after the kids were asleep, I sat beside Clara in bed and scrolled through the transactions in silence while she read a book. The numbers made my eyes blur. I finally turned to her and said, "We're $6,000 overdrawn." "I don't understand." She looked up slowly. "That can't be right." I handed her my phone, watched her scroll. Her lips pressed together. "Maybe it's fraud. Banks make mistakes. I'll call tomorrow." But I already knew it wasn't a mistake. The amounts matched the pattern of her spending, never huge, but relentless. I felt shame burning in my chest, as if this was my fault for not catching it sooner. I barely slept. My mind ran through contingency plans. Could I borrow from my brother? Sell my car? I didn't know how to look at Clara the next morning. She breezed through the kitchen, making Nora's lunch, acting as if nothing had happened. When I left for work, I called the bank from the parking lot. The woman on the line confirmed every transaction, every withdrawal, every bounced check. "All activity appears to be by account holder," she said. Her tone was polite, but I heard the judgment in the silence between her words. I went through the next few days in a haze, trying not to let my coworkers see the panic underneath my calm facade. I begged Clara for answers, but she always had an excuse. "I'll figure it out." "Don't stress," she'd say, or, "Why are you making such a big deal?" The first week, I told myself this was a misunderstanding. Maybe her debit card was used by mistake at a store. Maybe she'd return some things and it would all go back to normal. I wanted so badly for it to be that simple. But the overdraft fees kept coming. Our mortgage bounced. I got a call at work from the bank manager, asking if we planned to resolve the negative balance soon. Clara started spending more time at her parents' house. She brought the kids there for dinner, sometimes stayed overnight. I tried to talk to her, but she shut me out. One Saturday, I went to pick up Ben and Nora, and Judith met me at the door. She didn't smile. "You know, Daniel, sometimes men need to provide for their families. It's embarrassing for Clara to have to explain things to us." I wanted to argue, but I saw Clara in the background, arms folded, looking away. That was when I realized I was outnumbered even in my own family. Weeks passed. Every attempt to talk about money ended in a fight. The deficit grew. I sold my car, drained my personal savings, even asked my boss for an advance. Each time I tried to get ahead, another bill came due, another overdraft notice arrived. One night, after the kids were asleep, I confronted Clara again. "Are you hiding something from me?" I asked. My voice was raw, desperate. She looked at me like I was a stranger. "You're being paranoid. Maybe you should talk to someone, Daniel. You're not well." I left the room before I could say something I'd regret. A week later, I got a letter from the utility company. Our power was scheduled for shut-off if we didn't pay the overdue amount. I stared at the bill, my hands trembling. I thought about my dad, the fights, the darkness that always seemed to threaten our family when I was a child. I couldn't let that happen to Ben and Nora. But I didn't know what else to do. Clara's spending accelerated. I saw new clothes in the closet, expensive skin care products, jewelry she'd never worn before. When I asked, she told me her mother bought them. But receipts kept showing up in our account, her signature, our address. I started sleeping on the couch. The kids asked why, and I told them Daddy was working late. I hated myself for lying. Clara and I barely spoke, except to argue about money. She grew colder, more defensive. When I tried to suggest counseling, she laughed. "You're the one with the problem, Daniel. Not me." I began to wonder if I was losing my mind. Then, one Saturday afternoon, Ben came into the living room, holding a letter he'd found in the mailbox. "Mommy said not to show you," he whispered, eyes wide. I took the envelope from his hand. It was from a department store, overdue payment, warning of collections. The account was in Clara's name, but the secondary contact was me. The balance, $8,700. I sat on the floor, reading the letter over and over. I felt like the ground was shifting beneath me. It wasn't just an overdraft. It was debt I never knew existed, debt that threatened to swallow us whole. I confronted Clara that night, the letter trembling in my hand. She snatched it away, crumpled it, and threw it in the trash. "You don't understand what it's like," she said, her voice trembling for the first time. "I can't live like this, always counting pennies. My parents never had to scrimp and save. I just wanted." She trailed off. I realized I didn't recognize her anymore. That should have been the moment when we came together, but instead, it drove us further apart. Clara started spending nights at her parents' house. Judith called me at work, saying I needed to get my act together before they'd let Clara and the kids come home. I felt myself shrinking, losing ground every day. I was no longer a husband or father, I was an obstacle, a problem to be managed. The house grew silent. I stopped cooking dinner. I stopped running in the mornings. I stopped believing things could go back to normal. Then, one afternoon, I came home from work to find Clara in the kitchen, bags packed by the door. The kids sat at the table, coloring quietly. Clara didn't look at me when she said, "We're going to stay with my parents for a while." I tried to argue, but my voice failed me. She took Ben and Nora by the hand and left. I stood in the doorway, staring at the empty street. I felt like someone had hollowed me out. In the days that followed, I sank into a kind of numb routine. I went to work, paid what bills I could, slept on the couch. I missed the kids so much it hurt. Clara blocked my number, so I could only speak to them through Judith, who made every call a performance. "Maybe if you'd taken better care of your family, this wouldn't have happened." I started getting calls from creditors. Collection agencies left messages at all hours. I learned about accounts I'd never authorized in my name, store cards, personal loans, even a credit card with a 5-figure balance. All linked to Clara, but with my information. I requested copies of my credit report. It was worse than I imagined, my score was tanked, and there were addresses I didn't recognize. I tried to contact Clara, begged her to explain, to help me fix things, but she refused. One night, after a particularly brutal call from a debt collector, I sat alone at the kitchen table and cried. I thought about ending it all. The shame, the fear, the loneliness pressed down on me like a physical weight. But something inside me refused to give up. I started researching financial abuse. I realized what was happening wasn't just carelessness, it was deliberate. Clara had taken out debt in my name, hidden purchases, lied to my face, and cut off my access to my own family. I knew I had to do something. But I didn't know where to start. I reached out to my younger brother, Matt. We hadn't been close since college, but he was the only person I trusted. I told him everything, every detail, every ugly truth. To my surprise, he listened without judgment. "You need help, Dan," he said. "Legal help. And you need to protect yourself." With Matt's encouragement, I made an appointment with a family lawyer, Sarah Kim. She listened carefully, took notes, and explained my options. "This isn't just about debt," she said. "This is a pattern of financial and emotional abuse. You have legal rights, especially when it comes to protecting your assets and your children." The word abuse hit me hard. I'd always pictured abuse as something physical, but now I saw the damage in every sleepless night, every lie, every moment I doubted myself. Sarah helped me gather documentation, bank statements, credit reports, emails from Clara. She advised me to open a separate bank account in my own name, redirect my paychecks, and freeze my credit. It felt like taking the first gasp of air after drowning. I started to see the outlines of a plan. Still, the pressure mounted. Clara's parents threatened to involve their lawyers if I harassed their daughter. Judith called my workplace, insinuating I was unstable. My boss called me in, concerned about the situation at home. Rumors started to spread. I felt isolated, exposed. Clara filed for separation, citing irreconcilable differences. She demanded full custody of Ben and Nora, claiming I was financially irresponsible and emotionally unstable. Judith wrote a letter to the court, painting me as a neglectful husband and father. I felt like I was being erased. The legal battle began. Clara's lawyer accused me of hiding assets, sabotaging her access to funds, even gaslighting her about money. I sat in court, listening as my life was twisted into a caricature of failure. Every document I provided was questioned, every explanation dismissed. Sarah urged me to stay calm, to let the evidence speak for itself. But every day, the strain grew. I worried I'd lose my kids, my house, my reputation. There were nights I didn't sleep at all, staring at the ceiling, wondering how it had come to this. The turning point came in the form of a single email. I was sorting through old digital statements, trying to piece together a timeline for court, when I found a thread between Clara and her mother. The subject line was, target card. The body was brief, "Don't worry, I called and had them use Dan's info. He'll never check. If he asks, just say it was a mix-up. Love you." Attached was a PDF, an application for a store credit card, filled out in my handwriting, but I hadn't written it. The signature was a shaky imitation of mine. My hands shook as I read it. I realized Clara and her mother had conspired to take out debt in my name, forged my signature, and covered it up for months. It wasn't just marital trouble. It was fraud. I brought the email and attached document to Sarah. She studied them, her expression growing hard. "This changes things," she said. "This is evidence, not just of financial misconduct, but of criminal activity. This is forgery and identity theft." For the first time in months, I felt a flicker of hope. With Sarah's guidance, I compiled every piece of evidence: emails, credit applications, bank records, texts from Clara, letters from Judith. We documented the timeline, showing Clara's escalating behavior and her parents' involvement. Sarah filed a motion with the court, requesting an immediate forensic audit of our finances and a temporary freeze on joint assets. She alerted the authorities about the suspected fraud. The court responded quickly. Clara was served with a restraining order preventing her from accessing any joint financial accounts. The police began an investigation into the forged credit applications and identity theft. Clara denied everything, but the paper trail was undeniable. Her mother tried to take the blame, claiming it was all a misunderstanding, but the emails told a different story. In court, Sarah presented our evidence with calm precision. She showed the judge the forged documents, the emails, the pattern of Clara's spending and deception. Clara's lawyer tried to argue that I was controlling, but the facts spoke for themselves. The judge ruled in my favor. Clara was found to have committed financial fraud and identity theft. She was ordered to pay restitution, and her access to our accounts was permanently revoked. The court granted me temporary sole custody of Ben and Nora while the investigation continued. I felt relief, but also a deep, aching sadness. This wasn't the victory I'd imagined. I had proof, but I'd lost so much along the way. Clara moved back in with her parents. Judith stopped calling. The house was quiet, but at least I could breathe. I began the slow process of rebuilding. I worked with a credit repair agency to dispute the fraudulent accounts, negotiated with creditors, and set up new safeguards to protect my finances. My boss was supportive, giving me flexible hours so I could care for Ben and Nora. The kids struggled at first, Ben especially. He missed his mom. I tried to explain things as simply as I could, without blaming Clara. I started therapy, both for myself and for the kids. I confronted my own guilt, my need for control, my fear of turning into my father. I learned to recognize the signs of manipulation, to set boundaries, to forgive myself for not seeing the truth sooner. It took months, but I found a new rhythm. I cooked dinner every night, even if it was just pasta and Jared sauce. I read to Ben and Nora before bed, tucked them in, listened to their stories. Clara eventually faced charges for identity theft and forgery. She pleaded guilty, accepting a plea deal that included probation and mandatory counseling. Her relationship with the kids remained strained, but I made sure they knew she still loved them. My relationship with Clara's parents was beyond repair. I mourned the loss, but I knew I had to protect my children from their toxicity. I still think about how easily I could have missed the signs, how quickly my life spiraled out of control. I still feel the weight of what I lost, my marriage, my sense of security, the future I thought I had. But I also gained something, a deeper understanding of myself, a new commitment to honesty, and the knowledge that even when everything falls apart, it's possible to rebuild. Some days, I still wake up anxious, expecting another message from the bank. But most days, I get up, make breakfast for my kids, and remind myself that I survived. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this: money can be replaced. Trust, once broken, takes longer to heal. But with time and effort, even the deepest wounds can begin to close. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe that's okay. For now, I'm just grateful for the chance to start again, one day at a time. And that's enough.